Hello, very nice to be here. Right, that's me. What I thought I'd do is I was also suggested to ask some questions or some sort of key questions to ask at the end or to ask of you. And the first key question, which I'm going to start with, is why? Why would you actually want to get involved in an international project? And what would it bring to your organisation or yourselves? And to help sort of think about that, I just thought very briefly tell you about how I come to be here today. I was, well, prior to this, I was working in Brighton, and I was a performer and as an artist, and like a lot of us, I sort of go and see artists sometimes in international festivals, and I was lucky enough to be invited to festivals to perform. And so I sort of regarded myself, I suppose, a bit of as an internationalist, as an internationally oriented person. And that then got to a point when I was organising festivals and I was receiving international artists, and hopefully some of the artists I was working with would go abroad. And then, after a period of doing that, I got involved in an international project, which was essentially drawing together artists from different countries, and in an art rave. So that sort of dates it slightly. It was sort of sometime in the 90s, and we brought in performance artists and video artists and DJs and musicians, and we got together and we toured around some very dilapidated buildings in Europe and had a really, really wild time. But that sort of introduced me to some of the sort of issues around collaborating internationally. And then I sort of had a sort of seminal moment when I was working here. I came to work here on the European Institute of Culture, so a long time ago, in 1990. And then in 99, I created this project called Wrap the World, where essentially, very briefly, this was just about down by the river in Glasgow. We started a fax machine and put this paper into the fax machine, which is dialed into another fax machine in Johannesburg. And as the paper came out of that fax machine, it was fed over a table and into another fax machine, so the output of one became the input of the other. And as it travelled over, the marks that I had made, as Steve Streitner made in Glasgow, were added to by artists in Johannesburg, and then in Delhi the same thing happened, and then in Sydney, then in New York, then in Porto, until finally the second fax machine in this room started spewing out all the work that had been created internationally, and a child picked up the emerging fax and the departing fax and became a human link and a work of art that wrapped the world. That was the name of the project. And that really introduced me to the idea of what it meant to work internationally, to genuinely collaborate internationally. So in the 2000, 2001, 2002, coming from that, I sort of was very excited at the prospect of how to sort of formalise this process, how to get involved in a process where we could continue to develop ideas around collaborating across borders and across art forms. And so we established In Situ, and it is a European network for artistic creation and public space. There's quite a handful of a description. Like many European projects, it creates its own vocabulary, which is sort of, it's English, but you kind of understand it, but it's not the English that we'd ordinarily use, perhaps. But it does describe exactly what we're doing. It's led by my partners in Marseille, Le Public. Le Public is the first French creation centre, which is a space so large that you can develop outdoor work indoors. And there are now many creation centres in France and elsewhere. It's got, so far, we've had 5 projects financed by the EC. That's quite unusual. They don't like sort of funding an organisation, then refunding it. And so there's a success story in there, and now In Situ is recognised as being the primary network for art in public space. But there's these sort of whole series of applications, 2003 to 6, 6 to 9, 11 to 16. We're now at the end of Meta, which is a cooperation project, which started in 11, and we are in the middle of a platform project. So our experience runs across these 2 different approaches. And we've learnt a lot. There's a lot of trust. The organisation, we started off with 6 partners. We worked together three of us have worked together all the way through, myself and Pierre Savaggio of Le Public, and Werner Schrempf of a festival called the Strada in Austria. And what has made it work is that we don't vote. We have consensus. So we've had for a long time, a very talented chair, who's Pierre Savaggio. So that's really important for us, is we don't vote. What's also important for us is that 75% of our contributions go to artists, go to creation. And for us, we're led by artists in the sense that we're not engineering, we're not producing, we don't have a sort of a sub-agenda of the kind of work that we think artists should be doing. We are observing tendencies within European art, and we're amplifying them. And what that means is, just out of interest, what we've observed is that when we started in the early noughties, that's a horrible expression, but yeah, in 2001-2, a lot of the work that was coming out of a narrative theatrical tradition. A lot of the work was street theatre, street entertainment, street theatre. We hardly support any work like that now, because what has happened is that artists have been increasingly interested in more of a visual art aesthetic. There's more of performance in the landscape, of art in the landscape. There's also, very conveniently, been a tendency towards what you've described, co-creation, publicly engaged art, art where the public are active in the development of an idea or critical for its delivery. And that is convenient because that idea of the public being participants is extremely important within the guidelines of this kind of funding. And I was talking to somebody earlier on, we don't jump through hoops. We're lucky is that on one level we do, but artistically we don't. We're supporting the kind of work that we are following, and as it happens, it's the kind of work that the EU is clearly interested in seeing being made. And so in this time in Europe, we have been involved in over 50, many more than 50 creations, more than 90 artists and artist companies, and really quite massive public. We organise conferences, we organise meetings, we organise publications. Kate was referring to a symposium that we held 2 or 3 weeks ago in Greenock. It was called IN SITU Focus, and it was funded by the platform strand, our platform project. And the idea of that was to draw together thinkers and producers and artists from across Europe to talk about what I've just been talking about, to talk about how work is made and talk about the public's part in that work being made. Oops, what have I done? Yeah, that's okay. So as I said, we've got one coordinating entity, which is the Republic. We've got 18 members, we're in 13 countries. These are some of these are all the countries, these are all the members we've got here. I've got to say, when you're thinking about putting together networks, that is a big network. When we had 6, it was much easier. This is a lot of people to organise. There are now, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 5 full-time workers in the Republic coordinating. So when it was 6 of us, we'd have 6 in a room, and we were speaking 3 languages, English, French and Spanish, and therefore we'd have an extra 2 people simultaneously whispering in your ear as you sat around the table. And when we had larger groups like this or more, then we had simultaneous translation going on through headphones. Now, and it does shame me to say that my French has probably not improved a great deal, but all the French we work with now speak pretty good English. There has been a major cultural shift in Europe when people were quite chauvinistic about their languages or very realistic about their languages, but now it's moved, and clearly English is very much the sort of shared language. We're very strategic. There's all these words which are put up by my colleagues in Marseille. We're very interested in the whole process of how art is made in public space, outside black and white boxes, essentially. And we're very interested in what is that relationship between you as the artist, the work that you make, and the public, Is it owned by the artist? Is it owned by the public who manage it? Where does the art lie? And we sort of talk about this and discuss this at length. We share with each other the work that is going on. We meet very, very regularly, and we present the work of artists to each other. And we have a whole series of strands of funding within our cooperation project, which gives opportunities to bring money together, to make work through residencies. We run residencies across Europe and in Sri Lanka. We run symposia, and we commission. This is Pierre. He created this fabulous piece of work, Harmonic Field. It comprises over 500 instruments whose sound is created by the wind passing through them, and so it becomes a sculptural field with a sound piece within it. Kudlud, they appeared recently in Greenock. They turn the natural. It's a sort of like a Duchamp joke, really. It's they take found objects and explain to you why they're art. It's very, very funny, very talented, very fast. Stagecoach also appeared in Greenock 2 or 3 weeks ago. They gather together singers from across an area, and they sing the public through the area, with singing relevant songs and choral pieces to do with the history of the area. So it's very engaged with understanding the geography and the history of an area. This company here, Crew, you put on these virtual reality headsets, and they take you to another city. They take you to Japan. They took people to where the Japanese tsunami was, and you walk through the city. This company here, this collaboration between a sound guy here who's a DJ providing the music, a visual artist who creates these taped interpretations on walls, and a dancer. Olivia Grostet, did anybody see this? And we've brought it a few times to Scotland now. He creates full-size buildings in cardboard, and then this is a city of cardboard he created in Marseille. Again, Olivier was working with us in Greenock 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then when it's been made, you jump all over it. It's great fun. We've now in our In Situ platform, and we've created new tools for this. We're working with emerging artists. We gather groups of 5 or 6 artists together into specific locations. The next one will be in Marseille and in Budapest and in Kosovo. And they present their work to each other and to there'll be 6 artists, 6 producers. And then all those artists are gathered together. We did it in 3 locations this year, and they were all gathered together in Marseille, and so all the artists meet each other. We've created a whole series of tools to talk about our work, a whole series of communication strategies and ways of branding and finding ways of talking to the public about what art in public space means. We commission writing, we talk about policy, we try to influence. And as we said, we brought a lot of this together into Greenock this month. And we were able to put together a programme where we identified a particular group of artists from 5 or 6 different countries, 5 or 6 different companies, whose work was about public engaged practice, about co-creation. And they worked with the local community in Greenock, and we created this festival, and it was started with a conference, which was, as I say, an In Situ conference. I left there on the 3rd of November and went to Sri Lanka, taking with me Stevie Hurrell, a Scottish artist, and we're working together with 7 artists from 7 countries as an In Situ project, where they spend the first 4 weeks responding to the situation to create a piece of work that could only be created in Sri Lanka, and in the final 2 weeks they work together cooperatively to make a piece of work which was then presented to the public alongside their own work. So it's a very, very demanding, very challenging, very exciting and uplifting residency. It has created over the last 10 years 50 or 60 pieces of work. Without exception, every artist who has taken part in it has said it has made a remarkable impact and an important impact on their work practice, and in some cases it has changed their lives. And the reason why In Situ funds a programme for this, Sura Madura is the name of the residency, that they've funded several programmes to take place there, is because in Situ we believe you don't understand Europe until you leave it. It is only the process of leaving Europe and reflecting and considering yourself in the context of another culture, a very different culture, that you start to think of why, what it means to be European. And that's an interesting thing, because don't forget, this is a European project, and you actually have to believe in Europe as a concept on one level or another to actually want to engage with it. And I had some notes, which of course I've written on my phone, which I then turned off so I wouldn't disturb anybody. I just wanted to make a couple of concluding comments, if that's okay. So the first thing is the challenge, the benefit. Well, the benefits are fairly straightforward. In our case, access to artists and producers across Europe, creating a network that brought them together, creating co-producing relationships. It's a long-term project, ours, as I say, it's been going on 10 or 12 years, but even on a 2 or 3 year cycle, it's immensely valuable to have that reoccurring contact with other co-producers, other producers, understanding their work. As a company, UZ, we have a very long-term relationship with artists. There are some artists we've been working with, or I've been working with for 30 years. There are other artists that I've only met 5 minutes ago. And so that sort of the potential of a long-term mature relationship also goes with producers. So there are producers I've worked with in situ for 10 or 12 years. There's some I've only just started working with. It's really valuable, these kind of projects, to understand what is actually going on, or to at least start to understand what is going on, because what is going on in France and in Kosovo and in Austria is really rather different. And when you start to understand what is going on in these different situations, you also learn more about yourself and more about your own practice. And of course, very straightforward. When we set this up, I was running a festival called Big and Falkirk, which was a National Street Arts Festival, and it immediately internationalised the festival. We were immediately able to offer to the public, to the Scottish public, an opportunity to see work by really high-level European artists. And also, we were able to give opportunities for Scottish artists to see that work, enter into collaboration, and then have their work toured and promoted and presented around Europe. And those are all the really positive things. It's really difficult. That's the next thing. If I added up all the money that we have put together to make In Situ work from our side, from UZ's side, and thought about all the effort, it would have been much easier to put in local applications and do local work. There is no comparison. It is hard work, but it is immensely rewarding. If you want to know how hard it is, phone up my accountant. UZ Arts accountant. If you mention the words In Situ, she spits blood. As I left here today, she was almost screaming as she's trying to wind her way through the latest series of demands as to how you present what you've been doing. It is administratively very complex. It's not straightforward. It takes time. It takes time travelling. It takes time listening and understanding and talking to people. And with all of us, if you're producers making work, that you do have to have a balance in your life. You have to think, well, how much time can I afford to research? How much time do I need to be with the artist? How much time do I have to spend with funders getting it on? How much time do I have to focus on the public? And it is really clear that once you embark on a project like this, then that balance changes. And so you have to think quite realistically about what it would mean for you to do a project like this, what impact it's going to have, what is it going to require in terms of your capacity, your time, your colleagues' time. And in the end, I sit down and I do get quite a lot of response from my colleagues about In Situ and what it means. But in the end, we all, with possibly the exception of my accountant, come away from those discussions absolutely convinced it's a fantastic positive to be doing it. So the last thing is to say, be clear as why you really want to do it, really understand why you want to do it, be sure that you have the capacity, and if you think about what it might look like if you're successful, if you've gone through the process, you've put together the partnership, you've found a way of doing it, and you say, right, I've gone through that process, let's imagine what this is going to look like in 2 or 3 years' time, then is that what you really want? And is that the cost and your time and your commitment, is it going to be worth it? In my case, it is absolutely worth it. As I say, we have gone back again and again, 3, 4 times now, to go through that process. And sometimes we've had to take quite big risks. Sometimes you're signing contracts not knowing if the money's going to come from this side. We've been funded by Creative Scotland all the way through, which has been fantastic. But as we all know, Creative Scotland doesn't necessarily work on the same time cycles as real life. And for some of us, if you don't have a festival, you don't necessarily have a financial commitment from somebody for 3 years ahead. Creative Scotland aren't necessarily able to give it. So sometimes you're signing a contract for a 3 or 4 year project when actually you might not have the resource. So you have to think about that. What would you do if you don't find the resource? Because you've got to find it. It's contractual. And the contracts are unbelievable. We will sit down with a group of 15 people and at the end of a meeting sign 10 contracts, each of which have got 15 pages times 3. So you could be doing a lot of signing. I'm just saying that because I think it sounds, I don't want to sound negative, I just want to be realistic.
Yeah.
You know, and it is a fantastic opportunity. It's the most rewarding thing I've been involved with on an administrative level in my most recent part of my career. We've put a lot of commitment into it and we've got an enormous amount back, and it has certainly transformed my company in the sense that we are about as international as I'd ever want to be. So I think, is that enough?
Yes.
Yeah?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.